Now that we've talked about where the federal government gets its money and spends it and how they create their budget, okay, what about the state of California? What about the city of Covina? Okay, where do they get money and where do they spend it? Again, we did where they get the money back in chapter 9. We looked at the revenues that the governments get. Okay. Now we want to look at their expenditures. On page 270, they talk about the state budget process, rather 271. The state budget process in California is just like the federal government budget process. It starts with the president. Well, in the state of California, the president is called the governor, right? So the governor of California, Governor Newsom, he proposes the budget and he sends it to our Congress, which is called our state legislature. I know you guys haven't had civics yet, so you don't know this. But it goes to our state legislature. They rework it, come up with their version of the budget. They pass it, send it back to Governor Newsom, and he can either sign it or veto it. Just like the presidential, or I should say the federal budget process. Okay? What is a little bit different is our fiscal year is different. Our fiscal year in California starts July 1st and runs through June 30th of the next year. Okay? And in some states, not California, but in some states they have what's called a balanced budget amendment. Okay? If we had a balanced budget amendment, what that means is the budget has to balance. The amount of money coming in and the amount of money going out have to be the same. You cannot spend more than what you bring in. Now we know obviously the federal government does not have a balanced budget amendment. No way. Okay? They spend way more than what they bring in. And you might say, Mr. Ward, doesn't this make financial sense to have a balanced budget? We should have a balanced budget. We should never spend more than what we bring in. Yes and no. It sounds good, but what happens if the economy goes bad? If the economy goes into a recession, people are going to be paying less in taxes. They're going to be buying less stuff, so less sales tax. They're going to be working less, so they're going to pay less income tax. So if revenues go down, then expenditures have to go down. Now, when I show you what we spend money on here in the state of California, you'd say, whoa, wait a minute. I'm not sure I want to see us cut spending on those very important areas. And so where does the state of California spend money? Where does the city of Covina spend money? On page 273 are a couple of charts. The left-hand side has the state government. Okay? Where do state governments spend their money? And then on the right-hand side, where do local governments? Okay? First of all, if we look at the state governments, we know that in the state of California, they get income tax, they get sales tax, they get corporate income tax. Okay? All of these are sources of revenue for the state of California. But where do they spend it? At the top of page 272, they talk about intergovernmental expenditures. Now, we've already talked about this when we talked about intergovernmental revenue. Intergovernmental expenditures, okay, are money that one level of government gives to another. So in the state of California, they collect sales tax and they collect income tax, and then they give some of that money to the cities and the counties. So that becomes intergovernmental expenditures. Okay? But in the state of California, we're a little bit different. Okay? We spend a lot of money on public welfare. I think that's number 2 in the book. Oh, this pen sucks. What is public welfare? Well, public welfare are any and all programs that are designed to help the low income. Medicaid is part of this. We learned about that in the last video. Medicaid, or any kind of unemployment assistance, any kind of welfare assistance, any kind of assistance for low income. That's a huge expenditure in the state of California. Okay? The state of California also spends a lot of money on schooling. Now, this is different from what the book says. The book says that K-12 schools are paid primarily at the local level, meaning the cities or the counties. And that's true in a lot of other states. But in the state of California, kindergarten through 12th grade, like the entire Charter Oak Unified School District, kindergarten through high school seniors are paid for at the state level. Okay? The state of California spends money on schools. Okay? In class, we'll talk about why they do this, but it's to make it more fair so that citizens or students in Northern California, Southern California, Central California aren't getting different amounts of money for school. So the state of California spends money on K-12 schools. And in fact, this is number one on our list. In the state of California, that's on the test, you got to know that. The number one expenditure for the state of California, for the state, is public schools K through 12. Number two on our list is public welfare. Okay? And these are the numbers. This last year in the state of California, we had $143 billion. $143 billion. Schools got 58 of that. 58 billion. The low income got 42 billion. So you can see that represents, well, $100 billion. That represents quite a bit of the budget. Where does the other money go? So number one on the list, schools, like the education you're receiving right now. Number two, public assistance. Number three is higher education. What does that mean? Well, that means higher than high school. That's your community colleges, your Cal States and your UCs. The state of California spends a lot of money on that. Almost $18 billion last year. And number four on the list is an interesting one. Last year, the state of California spent $13 billion on corrections. What are corrections? That's our prison system. We got a lot of criminals in the state of California. Yeah? I'll tell you a real sad fact. It used to be that these two were almost identical. It used to be, not too many years ago, that the state of California was spending almost as much money on prisons as they were on colleges. What a sad, sad statement. Yeah? All right, so the state of California spends billions of dollars. Remember, the federal government spends trillions of dollars. Okay? State of California spends billions. And now you know where they spend it. Okay? They also spend money on insurance trust funds, okay, for things like unemployment. That's part of public welfare and so forth. What about the city of Covina? Well, the city of Covina gets billions of dollars. The city of Covina, where many of you reside, got about 43 billion, I'm sorry, not 43 billion, $43 million to spend last year. Okay? Now, where does the city of Covina get money? They get money from property tax. They get money from sales tax and things like that. The state of California gives them money as well. Okay? So, federal government spends trillions with a T. State of California spends billions with a B. The city of Covina spends millions with an M. And where do they spend their money? Okay? Now, in other states, a lot of that money goes to schools, but that's not true in the state of California. In the state of California, schools are paid for by the state government. In other ones, K-12. If you look at the chart on page 271, it's going to say schools are number one. Not true in the city of Covina. What's number one for the city of Covina? The police department. Okay. Almost 20 million. Almost $20 million. It's a little bit short of $20 million for the state of, or for the city of Covina on the police department. That's almost half the money. Almost half the money that the city of Covina spends every year goes to the police department. Number 2 is the fire department. And that was about 11 million, a little less than that. Now you might know that the city of Covina does not have its own fire department. The city of Covina does not have its own fire department. They have their own police department, but they don't have their own fire department. They hire LA County, Los Angeles County Fire Department provides fire protection, but they pay the county $11 million a year to provide that. Okay? These are the biggest ones. They represent almost 75% of the budget. Together, these two are called public safety. And that's on the test. It's going to say something like this on the test. In the city of Covina, what is the single biggest expenditure? It's public safety. Public safety. Police and fire departments. Where else do they spend money? Public works. That would be repaving the streets and trimming the trees and stuff like that. And in the city of Covina, that was about 9% of the budget. So 10% would be 4.3 million. I think it was around $4 million last year. Whoops, let's do this down here, 9%. And then the last one might be something that you've used. The Parks and Recreation Department. The city of Covina has a library. They have parks. Maybe you've gone swimming at the pool there at Covina Park over by Hollenbeck and San Bernardino Road, I think it is. Citrus and in between Citrus and Hollenbeck on San Bernardino. Okay, but the Parks and Recreation Department, that's about 8% of the budget. So about 75% goes to public safety, and then another 17% there. So every year when you pay your property tax or you buy something in Covina, you're generating revenues, you're generating tax money for the city, and then where do they turn around and spend it? They pay the police department, they pay the fire department, they repave the roads, and they provide parks and rec. All right, so you can read some of the smaller ones in the textbook, but those are the most important. So the state of California spends billions of dollars, and they spend it on, number 1, K-12 schools, kindergarten through 12. Number 2, public welfare, helping the poor. Number 3, colleges. And number 4, the prisons. And they spend billions of dollars. The city of Covina spends millions of dollars, and they spend it on the police and the fire and so forth. All right, that's it for section 2.